Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the month of October. This month is especially full of goodness. This month is especially full of healing, of depth, of emotion. You know, in preparation for making this video, it was very clear to me how impactful and how constantly underlying our emotional waters are. And as mentioned in last month's medicine wheel video, in September we were shifting, from fire to water. And so now here we are in October, really stepping fully into those emotional waters. And this is the full start of the west direction. This is the full start of a releasing experience, because that's really what water does. Is water helps cleanse us. Water helps to release things that have been pent up. Think about tears, right? When we cry, we are releasing energetics. We are releasing emotions. We are releasing past traumas, untruths, resistance, fear. The releasing of resistance is not unlike, the breaking of a dam. In fire season, we can often be so pent up and so tight and holding on so strongly to our beliefs and our definitions and our ideals, our morals, our values, perceived morals and values, perceived storylines. And in the west direction, we get to let go. In the west direction, we get to choose what wants to stay and what needs to go. So this month, as I was tuning into the frequency of it, tuning into the teaching that wants to come forward for you on behalf of the water, on behalf of the concept of releasing, it was, as I said, very clear to me how paramount our emotional waters are. And really, our emotions pretty much dictate everything. Oftentimes, we are in resistance to our emotions. I want to remind you that emotion stands for energy in motion. When we are resistant to the motion that our energy wants to move in, we create pain for ourselves. It's just that simple. And so in this month of October, the invitation is to begin looking at, if you haven't already, or if it hasn't already been presented to you, what are the areas in which I am resistant to my own emotions? Quite often we believe we are not able to feel the way we feel. And what I mean specifically is there's something wrong with me for feeling the way that I feel. And so turbulence occurs, internal struggle. Our emotions, and to stay in line with the visual of the water for the west direction, our emotions are a river. Our emotions are a downstream flow. And when we are in resistance to that flow, we are paddling in a boat in opposite directions, right? So we're just spinning in circles, spinning and spinning and spinning. And it's turbulent. And it's painful, and it's confusing, and it's muddled. Man, and it's exhausting. I think actually that is one of the more important things to consider, is how much subtle, energetic waste, how much subtle energetic depletion we experience on a regular basis because we are not trusting or listening for or allowing our emotional flow to take us where it needs to take us. And just because we allow our emotional flow to take us somewhere doesn't mean we're going to stay there forever. And that is a human conditioning. That is a storyline that we absolutely perpetuate, that if I acknowledge these feelings, somehow it means that I am stuck with them for the rest of my life. And that is a teaching that the West direction provides for us, because Water is constantly moving. Water is constantly taking the shape of its container. Water is constantly transforming into different states of matter. Water is so fluid. So while it may be rushing in one moment, as long as we acknowledge the rush and allow the rush, then it very easily has permission to go and settle down into a gentle bubble. Once it gets to the bottom, of that waterfall, then it relaxes and then it calms. Our emotional waters are the same. It's important for us to allow ourselves to go to the depths of those emotions. It can feel overwhelming. It can feel big. It can feel somewhat maybe unstable. But we find our stability once we allow the emotional experience to be fully recognized and acknowledged. And after a couple months of doing this, and I say a couple months because the West direction, just like all the directions, is for the next 3-ish months of time. We are in this West direction, this water element, this releasing experience for the next period of time until the winter solstice. And then at the winter solstice, we shift into the earth element. And that's where we start to really understand how to ground into what is left over. And when I say what is left over, if you go back to September's video, I was talking about how there's this beautiful pearl of love and wisdom that's left over. There is always an inherent teaching in everything that we are experiencing. There's always a kernel of truth. There's always a gift within the chaos, beauty within the chaos. However, if we do not allow ourselves to fully experience the chaos, meaning open ourselves to it, open ourselves to the emotional experience that's running through us, no matter how it manifests, anger, frustration, fear, sadness, worry, distraught. If we do not fully open ourselves to it, the energetics can't run through completely. And so the water stays muddy, and that beautiful pearl of wisdom is unseen. It stays stuck and unseen. There's a lot of reasons why we don't say no. There's a lot of reasons why we don't say yes. You know how when the temperature's really hot, you have to give, the desert, and or if you're driving on a long road and you look ahead and you can't really see because the heat, makes this watery sort of like vibrational experience, a mirage ultimately. And even though it's heat that's creating this, it looks watery from a visual perspective. And that's because it's really similar ultimately to how murky the waters can be when we try to look through them instead of diving into them. Visual sight is not the only way in which we perceive things. Diving all the way into something, trying it on, has been the primary way that I am ever able to fully experience something and know my truth around it. Because my truth is going to be different than your truth. The things that are in alignment for me are going to be different for the things that are in alignment for you. That is part of why community matters so much. And community is another aspect to this West direction. Community, sisterhood, brotherhood. We're going to get into that in the November teaching of the West direction. But the bounce back that goes on within a community experience of, these are my ideas, these are your ideas. This is my truth, this is your truth. Having that discourse, that dialogue, that conversation speaks to our ability to achieve clarity. Because we get to try on another's experiences. We get to take it into our body, into our field, into our system, and ask ourselves, how does that feel to me? How does my body respond to that? It's the same thing as diving all the way into your emotions. That's what I'm talking about. Trying something on, immersing yourself in it. Trying to dance above the emotional waters is just going to keep you stuck. We avoid those depths because we're afraid of what's down there. Because when we try to look down into it from up at the top, we can't see. It's murky. When we're driving on that long road where there's heat and then we see the mirage, the, watery sort of vibrations coming up from the road, we can't really see what's going on because it's too far ahead of us and we're not actually there. When we are looking too far ahead of us, we're not in our present moment. We're not in our experience. If we do not dive into the depths of those emotional waters, we can't fully know what our truth is. So we bounce ideas off of each other. We go in to ourselves. We look ahead and then we come back. We access and flex and unfurl and move into all the spaces that are presented to us. And we do all of those things as practical applications for fully experiencing something. Because when something is fully experienced, when it is completely experienced, then we're not bringing anything. We're not dragging anything with us. We're not dragging that emotional baggage with us into the next scenario. We've fully tried it on. We've fully experienced it. And so that when we are complete, we know we're complete. So what does that mean in everyday language? I'm talking to you like real esoteric and real metaphorical in a lot of ways. What does that mean in practical application? Well, I would say that the most common ways in which we struggle with our emotional waters are in the realm of relationship. Now, I also want to take a moment and signify to you that emotional waters live in our womb space. As a woman, I say that. It lives in our reproductive area. It lives in our sacral chakra. And our sacral chakra correlates to our relationships. It correlates to our appetites and our desires. Our relationship, not only to a person, but also our relationship to money, our relationship to the things that we want. Are we even allowed to have the things that we want? What is our belief system around a lot of these things? That speaks to our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with our external world. So when I say emotional waters, sacral chakra, relationship, all of those things are getting spun in there. All of those things are getting spun in there. And in order to find that truth, to know what our answer is, what our relationship is to any myriad of these things, we have to start to pare down. We have to start to go inward. The winter time, the earth element in the medicine wheel is about going inward. So this water element, this west direction, is about the transition point of paring down and going inward. It is the stream. It is the river that's washing us clean. It's the river that's allowing us to release and let go of everything that we've been holding on so tightly to or been activated by in the south direction. The things we've been fired up about. It's time to cool that down with water. Back to relationship. Back to practical application. Back to how on an everyday basis we can embody this west direction water element releasing experience. How we can tune into the energetics of our planet and be carried along with that. Another little nod to water and how it picks us up with buoyancy and carries us. Relationships. There's a lot of reasons why we say no when we are in relationships. There's a lot of reasons why we say yes. There's a lot of reasons why we don't say no, and there's a lot of reasons why we don't say yes. All of that comes back to fear, ultimately. All of that comes back to a belief system that is particular to you, specific to your experience, your life, that has told you why you should or shouldn't say yes to something. If you're in a relationship that you know is unhealthy, If you are in a dynamic that you know is toxic, not benefiting, and really not of the highest and best for anyone involved, not just you, but even the other person. And in reality, if it's not good for you, it's not good for the other person, because we're all connected in this way. So the balancing act cannot be in balance. Even thinking about that balancing act reminds me of being, on a boat in the water. We're trying to maintain a sense of buoyancy and balance. And if you find yourself in a relationship or in a scenario where it's not healthy, it's toxic, you need to get out of it. You need to be complete with it. But for some reason, you're just not yet. First of all, that's okay. It's okay to be right where you are. Because right where you are is right where you need to be. If you were meant to be somewhere else, you would be there, and you would know that you were there because you would have completed whatever needed to be completed to move you on to the next step, whatever that step may be. So if you're not there yet, it's all good. There's just simply more to attend to, which is why we have to dive into those emotional waters. If you know that you need to say no to somebody, how come you're not? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid if you say no to that person, that another person with the same qualities that you do love won't show up? Are you afraid that you can't say no to that person and still be loved? Are you afraid that you can't actually have what you want? Are you deeply afraid and in disbelief that exactly what you want is allowed? After working with people for a long time and working with myself for a long time, quite often we think that we're asking for too much. Quite often we think our desires are selfish, grandiose, also not appropriate. That comes up a lot with like money. Like, oh, I know that's like a superficial thing. I know I shouldn't want more money or be so focused on money. Fuck that. You are allowed to have exactly what you want. However, before you're able to get it, you need to examine your relationship to the things that you want. Because if there is guilt, if there is fear, if there is anything of a low vibration attached to that want, to that desire, it's going to get in the way of the channel that makes it possible for it, whatever it is, to come to you. And that's what this month and this teaching is going to be about. That's what the activity is going to be about. It is an invitation to ask yourself, how do I feel about the things that I want? How do I feel about the things that I'm still involved in? How do I feel about myself for wanting to be involved, for not wanting to be involved, for still being involved, even though I know I shouldn't be involved? I mean, there's so many threads of this that can just drive us wild. So in those moments, we are like a tempest. In those moments, we are like a tsunami and a storm on the ocean. We are wild. And what I want you to know is that you're going to be okay if you go into those stormy places. You're going to be okay if you dive all the way down into those deep, murky depths. Because your physical sight is not the only thing that is guiding you. And in fact, it's one of the smaller pieces of what's guiding you. What is guiding you is your entire energetic field, your entire sensory perception. So when you dive into those waters, your brain will then know, oh, I'm okay in here. Like, I know it's kind of cold, but it's also silent. It's kind of dark, but when something's dark, that means we just have to listen better. And that's a good thing. We get really anchored down by our thoughts. We get really anchored down by our thoughts. And the west direction is a very emotional space, and we can't be in our thoughts. We just have to be in our emotions in the west. Think about how good it feels to have a good cry, you know? How much lighter we feel once we've moved that through us. Think about how good it feels to call up your homie and talk some shit out, okay? That's that community, brotherhood, sisterhood thing that we're gonna get more into next month. But that's because you have moved your energy. You have allowed your energy to be in motion. Your emotion has come forward. So in October, the question is, what is it that I think I would like to keep? And what is it that I think I would like to let go of? And I want you to know that just because you write it down, or just because you go through the activity or the exercise that I'm going to give you, doesn't mean that A, it's going to happen instantaneously. It might for some of you, totally great. It might not yet, also totally great. I have had numerous experiences where I have known, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. And yet I had to keep kind of going back in to try it again. Try it again. Let me try this on. Wait, can I? Wait, can I? Wait, can I? I kept trying to adjust my sails to something, when in reality, what I had to do was go down into the ocean, pick up my anchor, and let myself sail away. And what is that anchor? What is that thing that's keeping you stuck? That's what I'm inviting you to investigate. The thing that keeps us stuck are our fears. So what are you afraid of? You know, as you sit here and listen, or as you're driving and as you listen, or as you're walking and as you're listening or watching, or however you're taking this information in, I really want you to trust your body. Because whatever it is that immediately comes up, that quiet inner voice, when I say, what are you afraid of? The emotion that you experience, the rush of energy, however it presents in your body, listen to that. That's your subconscious wisdom. That is your inner truth. And our inner truth doesn't always make sense to our human brain. It doesn't always make sense to our logical, rational mind. But that's because we're not operating from that place. We're operating from a deeply limbic place. We're operating from a fight or flight place. We're operating from childhood stories and childhood wounding is really what we're operating from. The West direction is a place where we get to bathe ourselves. You know, that's why the symbology of baptism is so powerful, because we get to be cleansed from those old stories. We get to be cleansed from those old belief systems. We get to be cleansed and washed free from limiting, anchoring fears. So as we are stepping into the build of the West, as we are stepping into the build of the water element, and as we are readying ourselves to release whatever it is that needs to be released from your current set of circumstances, be gentle. Start by being gentle. Start by allowing and getting curious as to what your emotions are trying to tell you. You know, emotions are like the weather. And weather presents differently every day. You know, weather presents differently on one side of the planet versus the other. And you are the planet. So in a moment, you could be feeling joy and, you know, exuberance. And then after a quick turn of the tides, you could be feeling a little bit lower and hesitant. There's nothing inherently right or wrong with how the weather shows up. It's again just how we choose to feel or believe this shift in weather pattern means. what it means. The West direction is a space of curiosity. The West direction is a space of inquisitive nature. There's a lot of visual imagery of, sitting at a beach and kind of looking out onto the water, or sitting on a boat and looking out onto the water, floating down the river on a raft or on a tube of some kind. Being carried. Let your emotional waters carry you for a little bit this month. You don't need to make any decisions. You don't need to rush anything sooner than it's time. Let the water carry you wherever it wants to take you. Because there is a learning here that our brain needs to experience, which is when I relax and let go and allow whatever it is that is not fully anchored in to be released from me, not only am I going to be okay, but I'm going to be the happiest I've ever been. As humans, we're not conditioned to believe in that, but the West direction is inviting you to start believing in that. So that when the North direction comes around and we are being asked to anchor in, to really earth a new set of circumstances and a new set of beliefs, we're real clear and we're real clean and we are comfortable, maybe at least just a little bit more comfortable than we have been in allowing what wants to go to go. You can't hold on to water, right? You can't put your hand in there. Like you can hold it with an open hand. You can let this happen. Water will stay there. But when you try and grasp onto it, it just comes through your fingers. It's an extremely important metaphor and teaching there for us. Because if you have something held with an open hand and some wind comes by and sloshes it out, or you fall off balance and it tips and it falls out, well, that's what happens when we hold things with an open hand. Things will leave us if there is an external force that causes it to leave us. What does that mean about us then, if something leaves us? Ask yourself that. What does it mean about me if this thing that I have in my hand leaves me? In truth, it means nothing. In truth, it just means that it left. But one thing's for damn sure, you keep trying to grab it and grasp it like this, there's no room in here. There's no room in here. Plus it's tight and exertion is exhausting. So hold it with an open hand. Hold it gently. Honor it. And then if something comes along that causes it to be pushed out, allow it to go. Allow it to go. And while I say all these things and I keep saying it, sometimes the it is us. Sometimes the it that needs to be held gently is us as we are moving through a painful experience. Sometimes the it is the sadness that is rising to the surface because we know we are about to be complete with an old sense of self and we are very afraid of that. Quite often that's what we are being faced with. I've been holding on to this belief about myself for so long. I've been holding on to this belief that I can't have what I want. I don't deserve to get what I want. I will never get what I want. What I want isn't even fucking realistic or appropriate or allowed. I've been holding on to that for so long that it is my identity now. So if I hold it with an open hand, if I let it go, who am I? You're everything that you have ever needed to be. You are everything that you were designed to be. And you're everything that I could ever want you to be. Holding with an open hand, trusting, allowing, being carried, being willing to dive in deep to get a better feel for the experience, to really allow yourself to fully and completely feel your experience. It is only in this way that something can fully move through us. And this is what the West Direction teaches. This is what releasing feels like. It's an exhale. It's a breath. It's calming, it's cool. I mean, think of all the beautiful ways in which you already nourish yourself with water, heal yourself with water. That is what you are invited to do for the next few months. The temperature gets a little bit cooler, things are paring down. It's starting to get a little bit darker, a little bit earlier. There's less light. When we hit that autumn equinox, we're in the balancing point of the amount of light and the amount of dark for our particular place in the world. And then the scales are starting to tip more towards the darkness. And we have this story and this belief around darkness that it's a bad thing, that's a scary place. But the darkness is illuminated with possibility, if we will but allow it to show us what it wants to show us. It's when we close our eyes and go into the darkness, diving all the way down into those emotional waters, stepping all the way in to the deepest parts of ourself. It's when we allow that experience to occur that the quiet whisper and the potentiality of newness can come forward. But when we stay up here on the surface, trying to dance, trying to juggle, trying to stay afloat, we miss a whole other aspect of existence. We'll learn more of that lesson about what's in the darkness when we are in the North Direction. But for now, as I have said, my invitation for you in this month of October is to open your grip a little bit, soften your hold on yourself, and get curious about what it is that wants to stay and what it is that wants to go. Because we are extensions of this cosmos, and there is an inherent intelligence in everything. So intuitively, we already know what needs to go. I'd like you to allow it to do so and experience the freedom that will come from that. In the next video, I'm going to take you through an exercise of holding something with an open hand, giving yourself some choice, and how to actively engage with letting something go. Okay? Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here for yourself. Thank you for being you. I love you. I love you.